Hello, Brave Masters. Welcome to our next episode of the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jena Rodriguez, and I am your business and brave coach. And I absolutely love helping people unleash their fullest potential, not only in their life, but in their business, and ultimately profit from what they love. And so without further ado, I am so excited to bring our new guest today, Lynn Marie, and talk about quitting. I'm like, what a subject. So we're going to learn all about that. And if I can just ask you, if you love what you hear today and love what you're watching, please give us a iTunes review or just leave a comment so that we know what you're thinking and how we can support you further. So we would love to hear from you. Without further ado, Lynn Marie, sorry, I know I shorten your name every time. Please let us know what you're all about and what your business is all about.
Well, I host the podcast Quit Happens, and I wrote a book called Quitting by Design because it is my purpose in life to destigmatize quitting, show people that strategically quitting whatever isn't working for you in work, in your love life, in your mindset can move you to that next level. And not only just to show you that it can, but to show you how with the steps of strategic quitting.
I love that. I love it. I mean, I think, yes, there is a stigma about quitting, like don't quit, but I think there's a context, right? A context around it. And so how, I guess, give me your definition, your context about quitting, and how did you get to this conversation for yourself?
Well, quitting for me is best described as for what it's not, because most of us think of quitting as giving up, and quitting is not giving up. Quitting is just the bare bones term for whenever you stop doing a thing for whatever reason. That's what a quit is, right? If you're in the startup world and you're a big fan of the term pivot, a lot of entrepreneurs on here are probably doing the startup thing, right? We're all familiar with pivot because it's a nice, sexy startup term. But what does pivot really mean? If you just looked it up in the dictionary, it's when you stop doing one thing and start going in another direction, right? As in when you quit one direction and start in another. And so quitting is just, the word itself has no connotation whatever. It's just a thing, a verb that happens, right? You just stop doing a thing. Yeah. However, we've given so much of this weight to it because we've equated it with giving up. And so what I'm talking about is not giving up, and also not like Office Space crazy quitting, burning down the place, burning all, everything in all the wreckage. I'm talking about strategically quitting something when it's not working for you, which means you've planned out the quit. You're sure that it's not working for you. You know exactly what part of whatever seemed like it wasn't working, job, relationship, exactly what part isn't working and what part needs to go. And then you've overcome the fears associated with the quit. And then you've prepared your finances, you prepared your relationships and your health. And then you've enacted a quit in the way that burns the fewest bridges and maintains relationships as best as possible. Because you can always unquit if your entrepreneurial venture doesn't happen to be, as great as you thought it was going to be. And if you want to go back to that other thing, best to have maintained relationships so that door may still be open.
Yes.
So that only gave you half of the thing. I didn't tell you anything about myself, but that's how I define quitting.
That was not A part.
Yeah, that was A.
Tell me the B part.
Yeah. I didn't start off, right now I'm a doctor and a lawyer. I didn't start off as either of those things. I was a multimedia designer back in St. Louis, Missouri, and I had to make a massive quit, realizing, okay, multimedia is not for me. I was really bad at it and I really didn't like it. So I made that quit, and then I spent 10 years getting to sports medicine, which is what I thought, okay, I need a career that has a future, that has some financial stability, that I'm going to enjoy. And so I thought, I went back to the drawing board after multimedia didn't work. And I was like, okay, do I want to be a dog catcher or a florist or whatever? And I found, okay, sports medicine doctor. But that took $250,000 of somebody else's loan money and 10 years to get to.
Wow.
And I got there and I didn't love it. And so at that point I was like, oh my God, this is a crisis. Like I am so in debt and I've spent all these years and I don't love this thing. And that's when I started realizing, okay, you can strategically quit parts of a job and make what's left work for you. And so that's what I had to do with medicine. Is I decided, okay, what am I never going to do again? I never want to take call. I never want to write prescriptions. I never want to work on nights or weekends. And I had to whittle it down and know what was on my no list. Okay, I'm never doing these things again. What's left? And then I was able to focusedly find a job that just had those things while continuing to pursue, okay, what is the thing that it will be for me? And so that's when I went to law school. And, I knew I was never going to practice law in the traditional way, but I thought, okay, maybe I can combine that with medicine, find some way that I'll enjoy better. And I tried a few things. I was in a startup myself, and I also taught law, and neither of those were it. And so at this point, I've got like a medical degree and a law degree. And one day I was like, I need to find my calling. And I had heard a podcast where Seth Godin was on Tim Ferriss's podcast talking about, like, ask your friends what your calling is. Maybe you can't see it, but they can. What do they come to you for? And so I did, and a friend agreed to meet with me about it. And like, while I was waiting for him in the parking lot, I got out 2 pieces of paper, and I wrote on one piece what I was good at. And the other piece of paper, I wrote what I like to do.
Right.
And on what I like to do was I like giving advice, and I like public speaking, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when I put pen to paper on the what I'm good at, the first thing that came out was quitting. Because I am. Because that's really like the thing that had gotten me that far in life. Like, I was 37, 38 at the time, and I had done so many things that I would only have ever been able to accomplish because I was able to quit all the things before it that weren't working.
Yeah.
And I thought, this comes so naturally to me. I think this is a message that needs to be spread. And maybe I'm the person to do it. Because if a doctor, lawyer can tell you to quit things, maybe you'll believe it.
Even after the investment.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Even because, it's not the reason to stay. The investment and the loans it's not the reason to stay. Right.
Yeah. And I love how you phrase it as investment, because a lot of people see it just as money that they wasted or, that they spent on a thing. And if you see it as, okay, in my case, I spent $250,000 of somebody else's money, but again, now I have to pay it back with interest. I spent $250,000 to become a sports medicine doctor. That's one way of viewing it. What actually happened was I invested $250,000 into finding a career that I would love. Mm-hmm. And after making that investment, and that sports medicine wasn't that career, I owe it to myself, since I have made that investment, to keep going until I find that career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's all just how you perceive it, and it's like, how do you hold the story, right? What's the narrative? And and I think that's what you're doing brilliantly is changing the narrative of what quitting means and what the context is. And I think I'm with you on that, because, my life has taken so many turns and so many like different career paths, and, and I'm sure people would look at my resume and go, are you going to quit me? Because it's like I would jump from thing to thing. But it's made me how well-rounded now, because I was an artist, and I was a numbers person, and I was doing accounting, and I was doing art, and I was doing makeup artistry. I mean, like all these different things. And it's just because I was multi-passionate and multi-capable, like that was how my brain worked. And, but looking at it, it's like quit. And it's like, no, it's like, it was the investment in what was next. And so some things come with a price tag. Sometimes especially in our world now, we're coaches or, advisors or what have you, and mentors, and there's an investment to that. And yet what you invest in today is still getting you to where you end up, period. Like, you invested 10 years of your life in learning something and mastering something and discovering yourself. And so now it's just what's next. And if you can master the art of quitting, I think it's brilliant that you look at all the things that you can actually do and accomplish because you're not afraid to quit. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of strategic quitting is that you have to learn from what you've quit. Like, take the good things, take what you've learned, take the learning that came with knowing that wasn't the right thing for you, so that you don't repeat that mistake, but also take the skills that you did learn. Like, multimedia was my first career. I didn't use it for 20 years, but then when I started my own thing with the podcast, I'm making my own Photoshop graphics and all, but those skills came back. And so even if you can't see it right now, you're like, oh, if I leave this career, it's a total waste. I learned nothing from it. First off, you learned you didn't like that career. Congratulations. And secondly, yeah, exactly. You never know when those skills that you learn, even if it's maybe just how you dealt with a coworker, something like a soft skill, maybe not even like a hard skill related to the field, that will pop up later. So it's not a waste. Do not view things, like you said, that narrative of a waste is so destructive. It's an investment. You learned something.
Yeah, it's always for you. There's always something in it for you. And it's funny because I that's what I attribute, like my ability to acclimate myself to pretty much any industry and, and clients is all the things that I did, and all the things that I moved through and learned and explored and all of that has served me now as the person that I get to be for other people. So I anchor that for people listening, because I feel like, I'm sure you hear this more than I do, but it's just like this sense of, what a waste or what have you. So I love that we're opening that door. So what's your take on, because I heard this when you were sharing, was like finding your truth, like being able to get quiet enough to hear your truth so that that even though the decision to quit or to move or pivot or whatever you want to call it is like, it's the right thing to do, but it's going to be really emotionally difficult at times. Like, how do you help people around that?
Well, if the emotionally difficult part is coming from fear, which it often is, then the first step is to identify what you're afraid of. What is the specific fear? Because there is, at least in my, in what I teach and what I coach and what I talk about on the podcast, there is a specific way to logic yourself through most fears.
Yeah.
Is the fear, what are people going to think of my quit? Is the fear, the fear that I've wasted this time or money, which we just deconstructed right there, right?
Right.
Is the fear of the unknown, what's on the other side? The first step is identifying the fear. Or is it, a guilt feeling that you have to talk about? And that can be logicked through too, because if you're feeling as though it's really selfish of me to quit, maybe you're a part of a team at work, or maybe it's a marriage or something when there's somebody else involved, the logic that I would provide for that is that it's selfish of you not to quit, because anybody who's in a relationship with someone else or who has hired someone else, is employing someone else, they want somebody who wants to be there, right?
Yeah.
You're not actually doing anybody any favors by staying around and giving it like half of your all or a quarter of your all when you don't really want to be there. And so it's most of these emotional things just take a little bit of logical reframe to help get through.
Yeah, I love that, because I asked only because I've been there, done that, where the truth, my wisdom, my truth about what is right for me, changed the dynamic, changed the scenario that I was in. And I was in, I've been in business partnerships where it's like, they've quit me. Like they've asked me to leave, like where this isn't working, that kind of thing. And that was painful. But it was the right thing. Like I can look back and go, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that gift. Right. But then it's like, I had to also be in the position where I'm quitting the partnership, or saying, bye to something. And it wasn't about them. It's about the compass inside of me and where I'm actually wanting to go. And I think when you can discern the fears, the doubts, the emotions, because otherwise, if you're not aware of your truth and you keep denying your truth, then it starts to sabotage the situation. And then like you talked about at the beginning, the relationships, burning the bridges, like things get ugly if you don't actually align with your truth and communicate what you need to communicate, especially when it's a quit. Right?
Yeah, you are much more at risk of that. Like, I'm a doctor, I work with other doctors, and there was one doctor I work with who had like the midday up and quit fiery explosion at our boss.
No.
And, that is like not the ideal scenario. Like that, his next employer is going to call our boss and say like, how was he as an employee? Well, that's just a terrible way to leave. But that only happens. Rational people only end up at that point when they've been pushed so far beyond what they can handle. And that's like exactly what you're saying, is like, deal with it when you're able to still rationally deal with it. Quit before you have to, essentially, quit before your health and your sanity are at risk. Like as soon as you start realizing like, oh, this may not be what's best for me in relationship, job, even mindset. But at that point, you can start strategically planning your quit. And trust me, the minute that you've made the mindset shift that you're going to quit, like, okay, I'm going to quit this thing, there will be an instant relief, I promise. And if there isn't, it's probably not the right quit for you. But that's a great way of knowing, like, should I quit this? Should I not? We'll make the mental decision to quit and start preparing. And if you get like, oh, I missed that thing already, maybe not the time to quit. Maybe just not the time to quit, like maybe later or maybe never. But if you feel suddenly better, then great, keep going along and planning that quit, because I think that'll take some of the like pressure out of the pressure cooker that is building up inside you from everything being in alignment, so that you're not so likely to explode at some point or suffer just really negative health consequences.
Yeah, because it then just internalizes. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I think the denial of the truth, right? Like, what is right for you? And then are you quitting on people? Are you quitting a situation? Like, what do you need to communicate? And don't wait until it gets like handled for you.
Yeah.
Or you have to like blow up because you can't even handle the emotions around it. So love that. Love that. And so I guess I want to go back to like more of your story, because I mean, I love how you're helping people, but it's like, what does brave mean to you? Number one, I always like to ask that question. And inside of that definition, what has been one of the bravest things you've had to come through?
Brave to me is, like we were talking about, having the fears, whatever those fears are, and proceeding in face of them.
Yeah.
Overcoming them. You know, if you do something that seems crazy, but you were never afraid of it, then I'm not sure how brave that is. That's just way to go. You just did a crazy thing, you know, but I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs have a ton of fears and we do it anyway.
Yes.
You know, like not even in the entrepreneurial world, but back when and then this is probably the, let's see, answers the bravest quit or bravest moment.
Bravest quit moment.
My bravest quit moment. Yeah, they're all the same. Is that, you know, as a high achiever, right? And I don't mean high achiever in life. Like I meant like it's in our DNA, right? And so, you know, I'm talking at age 17, I was sure I knew my plan for life. And I was going to be a broadcast journalist. And I would have told you that from like 4th grade on. That's what I was going to do. And so everything I had done to that point had groomed me for it. I was in professional musical theater. Like I was ready for this thing. And I get to college and like, oh, I don't like what I sound like or I look like on camera. I don't like what I sound like on the radio. The irony is that I now have a podcast, but you know,
right, go figure.
But I quit 4 different majors my first semester, which for somebody who was sure for the first, you know, 7 years or 10 years of her deciding, you know, what you're going to be when you grow up, was sure she knew what it was to make all those transitions. And then to get out with a video degree, essentially, I was hired in multimedia, and then to realize like none of this is working. I don't want to work in video. I don't want to work in multimedia. And to be like, I have to completely start over. And not only am I starting over, but I'm going to try to get into the hardest to get into career that there is, which is medicine, because only like 1 out of 3 applicants gets into med school. Wow. And it didn't just take like, okay, I'm going to now apply for medical school. I didn't have anything that resembled a pre-med prerequisite from my video degree. So I had to take like English 101. I was halfway through grad school when I quit grad school. I was doing multimedia grad school. I quit that and I had to take English 101 to like qualify for medical school, right? Which is like comical. But anyway, I had to do it. And I did that. And then I had to take pre-med. I took all of pre-med and took the MCAT in 1 year. Which required me to go to multiple different schools. So I had to drive 70 miles a day, round trip to these different schools I went to. And so I pulled it all off in 1 year. I do not know how I did that. But like that was all a gamble because there was no guarantee I was going to do all of that and still get into medical school. And it paid off. But that I think is the bravest thing I've done. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, for sure. You know, and so when was the switch to entrepreneurship? How long ago was that? That was, well, I had my quasi dabble in entrepreneurship was when I was co-founder of a startup in 2015, but that wasn't my thing. I didn't start it, right? Like there was a founder and then he like brought me on. But my own entrepreneurship, which by the way, I will be totally frank, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur because my dad had always told me the ultimate, you know, freedom and happiness is working for yourself, right? Yes. But he was poor. And so to me, I was like, those two things don't equate, you know. Like, and he was an entrepreneur? No. He's kind of this weird thing in between where he had inherited the family business, which was layout surveying in Southern Illinois. So not a cash cow regardless, but he was the only person, you know, once his father, you know, stopped working, he's the only person working in the business. So he is technically his own boss, but he's doing a thing that's totally not lucrative. But I didn't discern between like entrepreneurial working for yourself and like inheriting a business you hate and having to keep doing it working for yourself. And didn't quit. Yeah. I was just like, oh, I don't want to work for myself. We don't have any money. So I always thought, okay, you know, I hear what he's saying, but I definitely, you know, like I don't want to live his life. So I never wanted to do that. I was like, please, somebody give me a steady paycheck. But I think what a lot of us realize later on is that that steady paycheck, that steady is in quotes, right? Somebody can pull that out from underneath you at any point. You know, I work
It's
for the
not safe.
Department. No, I work for the Department of Defense. Like they could randomly have budget cuts and I could get pulled, you know?
Right.
You never know. My boss could have a bad day. I could get pulled. Like to be dependent on somebody else means that paycheck is not so steady. And so somewhere in there, I realized that. And then but then still I didn't just decide to become an entrepreneur. What I decided to do when I made that distinction, like, okay, I'm good at quitting and I like this public speaking, my friend was like, let's just throw up a website for you and like maybe you can give webinars. And like we had no idea what it was going to look like. We didn't know the how. We knew my why, which was destigmatize quitting, pass on what I have learned, and the how just came later. Like, okay, we put up a website, whatever. Then I just ended up writing a book just in my spare time. And then, well, I got a publisher for the book. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do while I'm waiting for it to get published? I'll start a podcast. And like everything just kind of like unfurled itself. And suddenly I was an entrepreneur and I was like, well, what happened? Like this is not in my DNA.
This was not it.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden then I realized like, wow, if I tend toward anything, it would be anxiety. And I think at least a lot of the females listening probably would gravitate towards the same. And I realized that like every time that I open up my Outlook, when I get to work, I work like 10 hours a week at the VA still. Every time I open my email, there is this moment of panic that there's going to be an email from my boss that I've done something terribly wrong and I'm fired. And like, I do not want even that moment of anxiety in a week. Like I finally realized, like, since I'm so in tune with my intuition because of this quitting thing, which is what I talk about, like the only way you can know if you need to quit a thing is tuning into your intuition and listening to your body when it gives you these signals, that I'm not now, anytime I'm anxious, I'm like, okay, is there a thing I need to quit? And I'm like, yeah, I would like to, at some point in time, quit checking my inbox for this, you're fired email.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think, I love that you brought that up because it's like, I was always, it's like I had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I didn't have the models. So I was creating businesses, but they were fake. At 10 years old, I'm like, I literally have a binder in my attic. The paper clips are rusted because it was when I was 10 years old and it was called the DNC Clinic Association. It was a dog and cat. DNC, dog and cat. Like, yeah, that's not what that meant. But she's a doctor.
Yeah, I was like, what?
That's so funny. I never made that connection. Okay. So it was a dog and cat business. Okay. And I had spreadsheets and I had worksheets and I had all this stuff. So I go off. I'm on a tangent. But the point is I always had the entrepreneurial ideas and spirit, but I never monetized it. My dad was a computer programmer. My mom's a housewife. She's an artist. Like that's like two different lifestyles. And I was always told, get a job, go to college, whatever, in whatever order. And, like live in a cubicle the rest of my life. And I just wanted to like shoot myself. Like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing. Like, no, I can't do that. And yet it's like, I had to figure out the rest, because there wasn't a lot to model. And I didn't know the conversation because now I have that conversation a lot, especially with my children, about, if you want to really have any form of security, because you can make money at any time, then that's when you monetize your skill sets. That's when you work for yourself. That's when you don't have to depend on someone else paying you, because if they fire you or lay you off or whatever, the business doesn't work. And just knowing you can go make money. Right? Like that's the safety, like create the money. But ultimately, the people that are making money inside of an organization or a business or something you see is the owner, right? In general, obviously, if they've done the business right. So I love that you're sharing that, because I think even, it's just a paradigm that needs a shift. It's like, not all business owners make money. That's also a true statement. But the potential is unlimited, and finding your brave. And I always say entrepreneurship is not the easy way. It's the brave way, because it's going to be the ultimate in personal development. It's going to be the ultimate in quitting what doesn't work, right? Pivoting. And it's going to be the ultimate in, like trusting yourself and only yourself to like make it happen, and ultimately. And I just love that your story of coming, kind of weaving in and out of, the traditional route or the college and then get a job. And then, I mean, you even pick the biggest two like careers, medical and lawyer. It's like, wow. Right. And now look at the gift that all that provided you to be able to serve people now. And I love that. And so I'm with you. I don't think anything was lost by any means on you by any means. And I think it's just this opportunity for people to really tap into what their quit needs to be. I'm with you. I find people they're hanging on too long, right? They're hanging on to things. And so what would be like 3 things that you would give people listening? Cause I love the fact that you started to talk about the sensations in the body. I think that's an amazing tip. I don't know, I don't know how quick you can give them how do you find that? Cause I pay attention to that a lot. But what are 3 tips that you could give people about quitting and just being where they are?
Sure. Well, like you said, let's talk a little bit just about the intuition and how it manifests. The difference between quitting and giving up is generally what voice you're listening to. You probably give up when you're listening to the voice in your head, which is just like, you can't do this. This is hard. You should think about strategically quitting if the voice in your body is talking to you. And that looks like anxiety, insomnia, irritability, restlessness, maybe acid reflux, irritable bowel, depending on how your body manifests stress. If you're going along your day and everything is totally fine and then suddenly you're anxious, is it because you opened your inbox and were waiting for the "you're fine" email? Is it because you got a call from your spouse and like every time your spouse calls, you guys have a fight? Like realize what is triggering these feelings, because it is not normal. Like so many of us have reset our baseline. Our baseline is now anxiety. No. Like we're supposed to be free of anxiety. And just because it has become our familiar zone does not mean that should be our comfort zone, right? Like
normal,
we should get out of that, that's the problem, is that it becomes so familiar that it feels comfortable, but it isn't. We shouldn't be there. We should be in this nice, peaceful, calm state of mind as much as we can. So anything that knocks you out of that in any direction, fearful, angry, pay attention to that, because that, and pay attention to specifically, not just like, you can start by realizing, is it my job? Is it my relationship? But this will go into, piece number 2 is that quits don't have to be major. You can quit part of a job. Say you just don't like the commute. The commute is killing you, but the job is great. Go ask your boss if you could work from home a few days a week. Yeah. Or, if your relationship, if you and your partner only fight about who's going to drive or how the other person drives, you hate each other's driving, then just Uber. Like just quit driving. Like you don't have to quit the whole thing. You can make little quits. And these quits don't have to be job, relationship. They can be, like I said, mindset. The mindset that you need to live your life according to society's standards is a great mindset to quit, because that will open up a ton of other doors. Because if you're not quitting your relationship because you're afraid of what other people think, and you're staying in this really boring cubicle job that you hate because society says you should, once you make that other mindset quit, the other quits will just fall into line, right? Because you're like, oh, hold it, I get to live my life on my own terms. Great. That relationship's going, that job's going. So that would be number 2 is narrow that down. And number 3, as you said, like people are holding on. That definitely they're holding on. And in there, they're doing something that is as my friend calls it, suicide of the soul. They're settling.
Yes.
Do not settle. Do not look back on your deathbed and think like, what if I had tried to branch out instead of just settling for like, oh, this relationship's good enough, this job's good enough, this city's good enough. Like you don't want to sit there and have any what ifs. What if I tried? Entrepreneurs, we know this because we tried, right? We're going out there and we are trying a thing. If we fail, whatever, we're not on our deathbed thinking like, what if we tried? Because we have tried. But apply that to every area of your life. Yes. You realize that, if you're not stuck in a job because you're an entrepreneur, great, but you're also not stuck in a relationship or a city or a diet. Like I've quit the ketogenic diet. I have quit my yoga memberships. I've quit cooking. I do not cook. Like realize any area of your life that gives you way more stress than it does bring you joy. And Marie Kondo that, like get rid of all of it.
Kondo it. Yes. Find the joy. I love that. Thank you for that. That was like, that just put a nice little bow on it all. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for being here. Lynn Marie, sorry, I keep doing that. And I keep reading the first word, and just giving your, just your honest approach to this. Like, I think it's just honest. I think it's real. And I think it's like, but doable. I think this is doable for people.
This is doable.
But it's all the narrative and how we're looking at it. So I just love that you to really stepped into this in your own life. Like, welcome, so that we can have a piece of it. So before I let you go, number one, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Quitting by Design. I'm at Quit Happens on Twitter. You can go to my website, which is quittingbydesign.com, and that's where you can find my book, Quitting by Design. I know this is really unique. And the podcast, Quit Happens, is there as well, and you can send me an email through there. If you are looking for coaching, go to the coaching tab, and you can set up a call with me. And then I have a Facebook group called Quitopia, which is the home of all things strategic quitting on Facebook. And so you can join that, and we have conversations there. You can get a hold of me any of those ways.
I love Quitopia. I love that. It's like, yes, I love that. I love making up words. So perfect. Okay. So last question. And this one, it's a serious question, because this is how I really want people to connect with you, is what you stand for. And so if this was the last interview, if this was the last speech you ever gave, like, scary, right?
Right. This is dramatic. Yes.
I know. It's coaching. What would be the message that you want to leave with the world?
Like I said, don't be on your deathbed looking back with regrets of what you didn't do or what you settled for. Your life is your life. It's not society's to determine. It is not your partner's to determine. It's not your family's to determine. It is you and your inner compass. And again, realizing that following that inner compass is not selfish, because what the world needs more of is you at your best. And so you trying to fit into another mold is not you at your best. And it's not going to be you at your happiest, and not going to be you at your most giving. So you're going to be able to contribute most to the world and give the most to society as a whole if you are doing you. And that's not selfish. That's selfless.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you so much. And I know you'll be speaking much more.
I sure hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
But it's the way this works, right? So we get the best out of you. Well, thank you again for being here. This was very special, and I just really appreciate you. And I can't wait to hear all the amazing ahas that people walk away with. So thank you so much. And to everyone watching and listening, let's go get our brave on. See you next time.